Super Sunday continues here in the Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas. Coming up next, we got Muzzy versus Fr0zen, a rematch from the first week, and rematches all around galore. Muzzy last time went up against Fr0zen. It was going Fr0zen's way, and now Fr0zen with the Token Druid. Do you think it'll be a repeat of history with different decks this time?
I do like the matchup against Mage. Muzzy does have some techs that make it a little closer, at least in the primary list. He has the double CJ, he has the double Frost Nova. And those are two things that, at least the Frost Nova, completely shuts down Token Druid. And because Token Druid's game plan is so linear, Sea Giants are almost always going to be able to come down. Now, the one caveat to that is that Fr0zen is playing the mech variation of Token Druid, which does have the ability to not go all in with a wide board, but make a couple of big minions with things like Replicating Menace, with Snip Snap. You can magnetize and kind of play around Sea Giants to a certain extent and play that kind of gameplay. If he doesn't have Whispering Woods, which is like kind of the big thing where your opponent plays Whispering Woods, then you can Sea Giant right back and force them to use removal or their buff cards to just clear off your stuff. So it is an interesting matchup, and Fr0zen was able to win this matchup yesterday against a Mage. But we'll see if you can repeat that and do it again today against Muzzy.
All right, game number one, Muzzy on the opening hand, 2 Sorcerer's Apprentice and a Banana Buffoon.
Ooh, Savagor kept!
Okay, Savagor as a keep against the Mage. Maybe perhaps as a way to answer early game threats. The second Savagor, probably not what Fr0zen wants to see. But at least this early game start from the Fairy Dragon is going to force Muzzy to react, most likely by playing a Sorcerer's Apprentice right back.
I'll be just like you.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's part of the downside of not having the ability to answer the Fairy Dragon. You need minions to fight back on the board.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, while Fairy Dragon's very good against Mage because they can't deal with it on turn 2, at least the Cyclone Mages,
I'm okay with it.
Sorcerer's Apprentice is also good against Druid for the same reason.
Yeah, it's like, imagine if we were in a scenario where it's like, I'll agree to not play Sorcerer's Apprentice if you agree not to play Fairy Dragon. Which deck comes out ahead on that?
Mage.
You think so?
Oh, no, on turn 2. If not played at all,
sorry,
definitely Druid.
Okay, yeah. What I mean is, if they're trading resources, the one that's naturally going to benefit more from it, I think, is Druid.
Is Druid, yes.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Lackey. I mean, it could have been a Goblin Rush Lackey, but the Cobalt Lackey with more power on the board with Savagors in the hand. It definitely stings.
Yeah. And we already kind of have to start counting damage because of double Savagor in hand. But Muzzy does have ways to fight back on board here. He could, for instance, play Sorcerer's Apprentice, double Banana Frostbolt. But with 2 Sea Giants in hand, what's his game plan after that? He kind of has to allow Fr0zen to go a little bit wider and then go for some kind of swing. But even then, there's not really a guarantee that Fr0zen is going to go wider. If his hand is buff cards, then he may never play more minions. He could just go, like, Power the Wild plus Hero Power next turn and roll that into Savagor, or roll that into Blessing Agents.
Yep.
So I don't think you can rely on Fr0zen's game plan. You have to kind of just pick apart the board while you can, see your next draws, and then look for an opportunity.
Agreed. One thing that's worth noting is that Fr0zen's playing very fast.
Yep.
By playing very fast, you sometimes can sucker your opponent into playing a little bit faster too. It's a very weird psychological thing. It's like, oh, if you play fast, your opponent sometimes plays fast in response. The second thing is that you give your opponent less time to think about stuff, because players like to use their opponent's turn to think about stuff. And by playing very quickly, you put the pressure back on them to immediately start figuring out the best response. So there's definitely a handful of players out there that agree that playing fast, if you can, is just generally good.
Yeah.
That said, there's also one hidden thing about playing fast that people don't really talk about, which is sometimes it tilts your opponent. They're like, think about your turns more. It's not that simple, but it actually fairly is with Fr0zen's hand.
Especially when you're playing an aggro deck.
Right.
Your opponent's like, well, just playing an aggro deck, not thinking about your plays. Just playing your cards.
Wait, I think
Double
he's
Savage
dead.
Roar. He's
dead.
He's definitely dead. He is 10,000% dead.
Oh my gosh. See, Muzzy's just shaking his head. Like, Fr0zen plays so fast, has a Savage Roar, new one was kept in the hand. That's what happens. That's the token druid effect. That's why Fr0zen brought it.
He even had 5 extra damage.
Yeah, hit over
on top of all that.
Yeah, Muzzy was at 23 or something, I think, and now it's 28 damage worth.
Yeah, that was
That is sick.
an insane showing once again from the token druid deck. I think it had a little bit of a tougher time in the games yesterday, but
Yeah.
Fr0zen already 1-0 start. Don't blink. Series might be over before you know it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think more importantly, this is not, of course, just like a ability for Fr0zen just like play his cards and win, but it's a thing that we heard PNC talk about, which was Fr0zen being an unpredictable player. Week 1, he brought Warrior. Week 2, he brought Paladin, right?
Yeah.
And then going to these following weeks, now bringing Druid. This guy has brought a suite of classes. And it's very difficult to predict an opponent like that versus Eddie's brought Warrior 4 weeks in a row. And if you feel like you can peg your opponent on that, you can take advantage of it. Now, Fr0zen having this advantage of being unpredictable and being versatile in his gameplay comes with one caveat. You have to play really well.
Yes.
Some games like that doesn't require you to think too much because you're just playing the curve and you're playing to the Savage Roar. But yesterday, Fr0zen was saying like he was just messing up stuff that he just wasn't. He knew he was playing a lot worse than he normally could.
Yeah. And one of the other things about Fr0zen being unpredictable is that he's a kind of a theoretical player, and the fact that his practice is mostly chatting and thinking of ideas, and not so much just like jamming out decks to try and find what's optimal. So one, you're not going to really find him streaming High Legend Ladder with the deck he's going to be bringing to Grandmasters that week, or streaming his practice.
Yeah, he's a very cerebral player. I mean, that's actually something that I've noticed. I got a chance to spend some time with Fr0zen throughout like the past year and a half, like every now and then intermittently between events. Just like listening to the way he talks about things is that he has such he has such a powerful imagination that he can visualize how things pan out very clearly. And what makes him also a very threatening player is his math abilities, his mental math abilities. He can calculate so fast percentages in his head. It doesn't shock me at all that he's a great poker player because he can identify the situation, very quickly break things down into like the 3 parts of the formula that he needs to, and then calculate it all in his head and just be like, yeah, that's like a 23% chance. I'm like, okay. Meanwhile, I'm like, I think there's a 1 in 5. I don't know. This kid is so smart. He's not a kid. It's very condescending for me to say. This guy is very intelligent.
He's still relatively young, at least compared to us.
Yeah.
But I mean, great imagination. He's got creative writing down. Great math skills. He's just missing Latin origins of words, and he's got the SATs down.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know what Fr0zen got on SATs, but I'm pretty sure it's a very high score.
Yeah.
That being said, some players, they're more. The reason why we bring this in contrast is because some players are more repetition focused. You look at a player like Orange, for example. Orange is very vocal that he needs to play things a lot in order to figure it out and like see it happen so he can get a good feel on what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's different strokes for different folks. There's no one path to success, especially in a game like Hearthstone. Now that being said, let's talk a little bit about what's happening here because the action is fast and furious. Fr0zen going for max stats early, and I think it's important to shut down these mirror images too because it restricts the Sea Giant plays, but boy is Fr0zen playing so fast here.
He is. I mean, I've agreed with all of his lines, but it can be risky, and Muzzy kind of trying to take a risk here with Conjurer's Calling, hoping to get some 2-3s off these 2-drops, but unfortunately,
that's what we're saying.
Not going to be the case.
It's what we're saying. Two-mana minions are just pretty weak across the board.
Yeah. And Fr0zen's going to keep racking up this board. Can go for Blessing of the Ancients here on 4 minions.
Yeah. The one thing he does have to be mindful of is a Frost Nova swing, which is why Fr0zen trades on through these boards, reducing the possibility of Sea Giant Frost Nova. Last time Muzzy played Ziliax, you got Ziliax right back, but I don't know if that's what you really account for. You can't really utilize the previous game to make you afraid of what is universally the good play, but is there a better play than just Ziliax here on 5?
He doesn't get the full value of the healing, assuming that Fr0zen's going to have to trade into it. He'd go up to 30, and then the second attack would be it. That's really the only reason why I see not to play it. His other plays just seem so weak. He doesn't even have, like, Hail Mary plays, like trying to go for an early Conjurer's Calling on a 2-drop for a Doomsayer.
Oh, wow. These are both very good options in the Mirror Image and the Arcane Explosion. The Mirror Image stops damage, improves the board state for CGI to come down. Arcane Explosion against Token Druid is like the card to pick a lot of times. But without a Whispering Woods, instead Fr0zen's going for a mid-sized buff board. Arcane Explosion is not guaranteed. Just like Arcane Explosion against Zoo Warlock is not nearly as good as it is against Token Druid. And Fr0zen's playing a little bit more of that Zoo-centric style. Like definitely a lot of minions on the board, but they're a lot taller than just the 1/1s.
The benefit of the Arcane Explosion is that he can play here to take off 2 minions. He actually knows that there's a Blessing of Ancients in hand because of the Twin spell. So no point in trying to hold on to it to get additional value.
Fairy Dragon. That is very tempting to develop right now. I was looking originally for Fr0zen just to push damage with the Replicating Menace, but that might be a little bit too tall, too wide. That makes it easy for things like Ray of Frost and like even the Ziliax. That might introduce problems.
Dreamway Guardian's Blessing the Ancients here seems like the most straightforward play. Let's count the damage. He pushes 7 this turn, and he'd have 7 plus 4, 11 on board. So he'd be down to 20, and then 11 plus 11 next turn. So it is a 2-turn lethal setup.
Assuming none of his board gets frozen.
But he's actually just going to go for full development here and try and go for Blessing of Ancients plus Savage Roar next turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also a 2-turn setup for sure, because there's 12 damage on the board with the or 14 rather with the hero, plus 6, 9, 11. Yeah, that'd be enough for just with Savage Roar alone.
Yeah.
Muzzy, of course, isn't going to let that slide as easily. Does have options at his disposal right here. The first thing that I'm thinking of is, does he need to use Frost Nova here? And if he doesn't have to, is there an alternative instead to stall?
Go for Ziliax, but it kind of just delays the inevitable. He knows that Fr0zen would be able to just play Blessing of Ancients and trade over the Ziliax, and then Muzzy would be in the exact same position in the following turn. He'd just have 1 extra draw. Maybe he's okay with that. Trying to see what his next card is. Maybe he can go off with Sorcerer's Apprentice Research Project next turn to try and go for a big swing turn, potentially with Sea Giant. But he could go for Sorcerer's Apprentice, Frost Nova here, and then try and set up for Sea Giant Conjurer's Calling, but then he doesn't have a freeze left. So then you can develop a giant board, but there's no taunts in the 10-mana pool, so Fr0zen could just bypass it and Savage Roar for kill anyway.
Yeah, Blessing of the Ancient Savage Roar. Is
a lot.
Is a lot.
It would be 5, 6, 7, 8.
13 plus 10, 23. His opponent's at 28.
Yeah.
So
down to 5.
It's pretty close, but Muzzy knows that with 1 Savage Roar and the 2nd Blessing of Ancients used, he was ready for this possibility, and the Frost Nova here is what's really critical, and Muzzy's ready with his Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Oh, Mirror
Image.
Because that allows the Sea Giant and the Frost Nova to come down. Not quite the Conjurer's Calling.
Right.
But honestly, this does give him a chance. 5 health is not very much. I mean, Fr0zen does have 2 swipes in the deck. So, no sources of card draw, though. That's the big thing.
By also killing the minion, he allows both of these bombs for the Explodinator to come out. I don't know if that's relevant right now, but it gives more mechs to magnetize and have these bombs strike back.
I think at this point, Muzzy just has to try and clear as much of the board as possible to limit the power of Power of the Wild, 2nd Blessing of the Ancients.
Oof,
Is that a Mountain Giant? Oh,
dead draw.
Yikes.
And at 10 mana, there's no taunts, there's no rush minions, with Mulch Muncher now being buffed, air quotes, to 9 mana.
He can still pick up, like, 2nd Frost Nova from this research project.
Yeah.
And then push 11 this turn. Conjurer's Calling.
2nd Sea Giant.
And Frost Nova!
Another Frost Nova! And he can Conjurer's Calling!
That is a counter-lethal setup!
As long as these powerful minions come out.
I think regardless, no matter which 10 drops you get, because he's playing the Sea Giant alongside of it.
Is there a swipe in the deck?
There's 2 swipes in the deck, but he can only draw 1, and he can't get past it everything.
That's right, there's not enough board space.
He doesn't have board space at all. Even though Magnetize comes on to, it's essentially acts as a buff, you still need the empty board space to be able to play a minion to Magnetize. So he can't play Ziliax. And he is dead.
That's right. The lack of board space restricts Fr0zen, and now Muzzy able with the counter-lethal stop Fr0zen in his tracks.
Yeah, and you know, kind of the key cards that we talked about in the deck previews before this match started, Sea Giants and Frost Novas. Those are drawing both of those, plus both Frost Novas, allowed Muzzy to try and just bide his time and go for that one big explosive turn. And from 30 over 2 turns, Fr0zen died.
It was the exact cards that he needed, like the Sea Giant with the mirror image and the Frost Nova is like able to just put him over the top.
Yep.
Had he be missing any of that power, he'd be not enough stall for the counter lethal, and Fr0zen would have been able to attack. Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's also unlikely, right? Because Muzzy already played a Frost Nova, so Fr0zen was playing the odds of like, well, he doesn't really have a chance for another Frost Nova. But it doesn't look like we're switching. We're going into game number 3. Primary decks are still going to be in play here. Muzzy going for a magic trick, sees a push opportunity with the magic trick or a mirror image research project. I think we've seen the power of mirror image. It's very useful in this matchup.
Absolutely.
To discount, also to stall. Remember, Muzzy needed every point of life he could have really gotten. Had he had not stalled, he would have probably died from that Savage War play.
Just playing a Mana Cyclone to contest the Fairy Dragon. Aw, Fr0zen go for a cheeky play here.
This
Power
is
the Wild
so
for a
interesting. Yeah, this is definitely... So Fr0zen sits up because he's like, wow, this is actually a decision that might require my full turn to think.
Whoa.
So if you buff with the Power of the Wild, your follow-up play next turn is Evil Cable Rat and Lackey. Then you have Blessing of Ancients. The nice thing is that your opponent can't really deal with the Fairy Dragon, but he also played Magic Trick, which means you have to calculate the odds of him finding like Cinderstorm or Arcane Missiles or Arcane Explosion, and making it worthless to Power the Wild anyway.
And the fact that his hand is very light on minions right now means that these buff cards are going to be dead unless he finds minions. And Power the Wild, the fact that it can be played as a 3-2 means that you have just an extra minion generation. Bud is going to go for...
Interesting. And
buff.
And the trade, too.
Yeah.
You had the opportunity to maybe just go face, let Muzzy deal with it. But he knows that well, no, it can't be a banana buff because it's only 3 mana.
What to do?
Might be something that I'm not thinking about. Or maybe just denies the Conjurer's Calling opportunity. That's probably it.
The future is ours.
That's a very sad-looking Stargazer Luna right there.
Yeah.
Their Lackey's great. Those are not great at all. Oh, Witching Hour can resummon the Fairy Dragon. It's a dragon. I've done that 3 days. I've done it 3 days in a row. 3 days in a row.
Well, okay.
Because even when Fr0zen wasn't playing, I talked about it on stream in the day that he wasn't playing.
TJ, very funnily, Witching Hour, Predatory Instinct, and Stampede Roar all have one thing in common. It's synergized with Beast. The only Beast that's in Fr0zen's deck, I believe, is Evil Cable Rat.
Cable Rat, yeah.
So he could either double the Cable Rat to 2 health, he could either summon back a 3-mana 1/1, or he could summon it and give it Rush for 6 mana.
The squirrels from Acorn Bearer are also beasts.
Okay.
But I don't think the Dryads are beasts from Dreamwake Guardians. And Fairy Dragon, despite what I think, or what I've thought for the past 3 days.
I think Predatory is
Fairy Dragon
hard draw. Yeah. That is so funny. Druid just like, I mean, there's a lot of other spells that you could have gotten. You could have got Ramp, you could have gotten Card Draw, could have gotten just straight up damage.
All right, the Dryad from Dreamwake Guardians is not a beast, so
yeah,
it's Evil Cable Rat and the squirrels from Acorn Bear. That's it.
So funny enough, because both players spent so much of their early game resources. Oh, that's actually a good draw here.
It's a great draw.
Because both players spent so many resources. Like Muzzy doesn't get the card draw, Fr0zen doesn't get the early game snowball. Yeah, Dryas are not beasts. They don't even look like beasts.
I don't know.
They're made of crystals.
They're tokens. There's a lot of weird beasts in the world of Hearthstone. I mean, Fairy Dragon, even though it has dragon in the name, doesn't look like a traditional dragon.
I think, Fairy Dragon, you're beautiful the way you are. Don't let anybody categorize you based off of physical outward appearances. You are a strong, independent dragon that doesn't need any caster affirmation.
It's a very beastly dragon.
I always knew you were ignorant, TJ, but this takes it to a new level. This is not looking good for Muzzy. He picks up Archmage Antonidas. How badly does Muzzy wish he teched in the Vex Crow Dart Frog, TJ?
Pretty badly.
I mean, that's Sagan's tertiary deck. Muzzy, instead, his tertiary deck is an anti-OTK Paladin with the Spellward Jeweler, the Geppetto Joybuzz, and Hakar.
Which is funny. PNC did the same thing because he knew he was playing against Fr0zen. They both had the read that Fr0zen was going to play Holy Wrath Paladin.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
By putting a secondary or tertiary deck to specifically counter Holy Wrath Paladin and nothing else. I guess it's specifically Holy Wrath Paladin, nothing else. I guess Spellward Jeweler also has merit against like Freeze Mage. That's a very fringe deck right now in the metagame.
What to do? What to do?
Yeah, Muzzy thinking about whether or not it's worth being defensive here because he knows that the possibility of the double Savage Roar. He also saw Fr0zen hasn't been playing anything from the left side of his hand. It's been all on the right. So he's making reads about buffs and Savage Roar. So to stop the damage, he's dumping part of his hand. And that's something that seems fairly accurate. Because, I mean, even if it wasn't Savage Roar, it was 2 Blessing of the Ancients. Fr0zen would have pumped out major damage this turn. And he still can. He can just go for the Acorn Bearer and buffs. He could go for Ethereal Lackey to see what happens first. Fr0zen trying to interpret what is his best possible setup for a 2-turn. I mean, he could also go for a Soul of the Forest play here.
Yeah, Ethereal Lackey, Acorn Bearer, Soul of the Forest, then follow that up with Blessing of the Ancients.
Because he has 2 Blessing of the Ancients, I kind of like the idea of getting one of them out. Savage Roar discovered!
But Dan, another Predatory Instinct. That's completely useless because the first one pulls the last piece in his deck. They can pick up Fairy
They could totally pick up Fairy Dragon. To be fair, TJ, if I were to categorize, I'd probably say Beast/Dragon. It is possible, right? They could belong to multiple tribes. Muzzy with the Archmage Antonidas evocation play.
Just kind of got to get something going, and Archmage Antonidas is the only board presence he could possibly have.
Desperate time calls for desperate measures.
Yeah.
How much damage does Fr0zen have here? I don't think it's enough.
Can Muzzy, if this Archmage Antonidas is left on the board, can Muzzy set up a 2-turn lethal himself? He'd Frost Nova and Fireball, so he'd push 11. And then he'd have 17 the following turn. So no, that's only 28. Doesn't even screw. I mean, it brings Fr0zen down to a low life total, but you have to find freezes back-to-back in order to make that happen. And the funny part about it is there's even the Dryads on the board, which are complicating things because they have lifesteal. And even Zilliax in the hand. Muzzy needs kind of a miracle right now.
Well, he got one last game.
Yes. But his hand this game doesn't seem like it has as much. He does have the Conjurer's Calling Frost Nova, but even just the way Fr0zen's hand is right now, he can't even develop much more. So even Fr0zen's ability to go wide on board is limited.
Time waits for no one.
If you're Fr0zen, you can answer the Antonidas and you'll still have some stuff left over.
I think you just ignore the Antonidas. I don't think you're even worried about the fireballs. I think you just go for 8 face damage here. Fr0zen get like double fireball trade, but Savage Roar, Blessing of the Ancients in hand, plus swipe is direct damage.
Oh boy. TJ.
All right, now what's the calculations? Sea Giant's Frost Novas pushes 5. There's now 13 damage on board with 12 in hand. That's 25. It's one point.
But you
point
can
no,
Ray of
6 points off.
Frost.
What to
Can
do?
Conjur's Calling the
What to
7-mana
do?
minion. That is something worth evaluating. Is it better to Conjur's Calling than Sea Giant here?
It may be. 7 drops can be very good. You get multiple Baron Geddons to try and clean up this board
What to
state.
do?
I mean, there's a handful of
What to
taunts. There's
do?
Rabble Bouncer. There's also the taunt minion that deals 3 damage as a death rattle.
Tunnel Blaster.
Is that a 7-mana minion?
Time runs out
Tunnel
on
Blaster?
me.
I think it might be a 6-mana minion. He's considering it. These are all possibilities. Sea Giant Frost Nova might be too hard to pass up though as a clean play. Trade first. Muzzy recognizes he can't win the race this way.
No, Tunnel Blaster is 7. You're correct.
2 swipes. Alright, well that Antonius can go down through a Ziliax. Ziliax and Blessing of the Ancients. Very clean mana usage this turn. And the board still looks very intimidating to overcome.
And Muzzy's outs are becoming like Conjur's Calling Sea Giant to double the Big Bad Archmage into taunts like Damage Stegatron Sunwalker. Ziliax?
Weaken at Conjur's Calling, Ziliax Ray of Frost. 10 mana 8/8s. Not really what he's looking for here.
In a weird way, those are kind of the worst because if you just want big piles of stats, you'd rather have Mechathune or Deathwing.
Right.
And then if you wanted more minion generation, then you'd rather have Big Bad Archmage. So the 8/8s, not great.
I wonder.
If he's Ziliax and Rays of Frost a minion, he goes up to 19 with the 2 swipes.
Unity, precision, perfection.
There is 8 plus the 9 on board. That is 19. TJ, swap.
That's 17.
Is it 17? Oh, you're right, 17. I apologize.
So he could Predatory Instincts and find Ethereal Lackey, but I don't think that can pick up any outs for lethal.
A Savage Roar swipe, though. How much? Isn't it's
Savage Roar, he goes up to 22. He pushes 13 on board, 17 with 1 swipe. It's 17 either way.
Okay. 9 plus 6.
The Savage Roar does set him up for a swipe out for lethal, I believe.
15. Yep.
Wait, because he goes up to 22, and you push you push 17.
Well, I
So
was thinking
you-
that you swipe the Ziliax too, maybe. Because if you double swiped the face, you go down to 8, and then you put him down to 2.
Yeah, either way puts him down to.
Time waits for no one.
Wait, swipe plus Savage Roar, that's.
Plus the 1 damage, so that's 8, 10, 11.
He sets up for a swipe out for lethal.
Yes. This is not quite it. He had 17 no matter how he cut it, just like you said.
Yep. But this one gives him the swipe from hand in case Muzzy goes for some type of freeze play. Let's say he has Mana Cyclone or a bunch of Ray of Frost. I mean, at this point, he knows that 3 cards in the hand are Fireball, but...
I mean, if he had Fireball Frostbolt, he'd still be 1 damage off lethal.
Yeah.
It's so close, and
I wonder.
Muzzy doesn't have the mana cost to properly deal with this because there's no 10 mana minions directly that can save him. He might have to Conjur's Calling one of his 10 drops here. I hope he gets Big Bad Archmage into a taunt, but we know that Fr0zen still has a swipe anyways. These 1-drops, like Acorn Bearer, are 5/4s. They're so fearsome. But it's looking like it's a Muzzy defeat here no matter how you slice it. Another Jumbo Imp comes out. And Muzzy is going to concede. Token Druid with a 2-0 performance from Fr0zen this week. In sharp contrast to the other token druids, which had been struggling to say the least. Silver Name was bringing token druid this week, didn't do well. In the previous week, Chonsu brought token druid, and Rivius, both of them were not doing that well. But this week, two players, Dawn and Fr0zen, able to get big W's with the druid class.
Yeah, it did get a little bit of help with Snip Snap, but honestly, the deck operates pretty much the same exact way. Snip Snap, like you mentioned earlier, just kind of a support card. It just allows you, gives you one more reason to go for the mech approach, as opposed to like Whispering Woods and the traditional token druid approach. But other than that, it's the same deck. Fr0zen did also decide to include more one-drops and Fairy Dragons, which I think going up against two mages this week definitely helped. You saw how much work the Fairy Dragons were putting in, forcing out a Sorcerer's Apprentice in Game 1, forcing Muzzy on a weird line of play in Game 3 that Fr0zen was able to play around himself with Power of the Wild and end up dealing with Stargazer Luna as well because of it. So all these different inclusions Fr0zen making, having him a lot of success this week.
Oh, that's right. Fr0zen being able to be unpredictable, as you heard some of his opponents say, makes it very tricky to be able to handle him. We're going to have a chance to talk to Fr0zen, see if he's on the line there. Fr0zen, you there?
Yeah. Hey, what's up?
All right, man. Another win here in the books, 5-3 into the record. I got to ask, did you expect a Druid to be as effective as it was, or do you feel like it was going to be a little bit more contested?
I think versus Muzzy, definitely way more contested. I was extremely fortunate. I don't know if you guys noticed. I got coin all 3 games, and the difference in this matchup of having coin and not having coin is like night and day. I think there might be like a 30 or 40% win rate swing on it.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's a massive difference. Yeah, I mean, we saw that you were able to get to this fast start there. Why do you think that is for Muzzy? Is it just because PNC has that really top-end greedy version, so it was just a lot easier to pressure him compared to Muzzy's deck list?
Yeah, there are some really good cards against me. Like Sea Giant usually comes down for 0 mana at some point in the game because they can stall out, especially with Muzzy's list since he has the Novas. Like Frost Nova and Sea Giant, I think, are very, very vital to beating Token Druid. And Muzzy runs 2 of both.
Yeah, that makes sense. How important do you think it is to be unpredictable? We got a chance to talk to PNC, and he was talking about how tricky it is to prepare for you in particular for the week. Do you recognize that? Do you play into it, or are you just kind of playing your thing and just picking whatever you feel like is good?
Yeah, I definitely play into it because I also try to balance my the decks I play. I don't try to play a different deck every single week, and I try to think about certain combos of decks that would all be good, and then I'll pick one of the decks that I think would be good in the week, and not just always default to what I think will be the best.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Very concisely said. Yeah. How do you feel about your play today? Do you feel like it was a lot tighter than yesterday?
Yeah, I definitely think that I made all the best decisions. Yeah, I think Muzzy definitely got pretty unfortunate, and I mean sometimes that happens.
No, it's true. Especially, it's not even necessarily you getting the coin; it's taking the coin away from the mana cycle mage, which is what really hurts him the most. Yeah. TJ, any questions here for Fr0zen?
Did it make you feel good that both your opponents this week in either their secondary or tertiary deck had a hard counter for Holy Wrath Paladin?
Yeah, that was basically a wasted counter deck that they could have improved maybe this matchup with like empty tech, rabble bouncer, stuff like that. So I definitely feel like I got a little bit of an edge for bringing Holy Wrath Paladin at some point.
Absolutely. Fr0zen, are you joining us in Vegas by any chance?
Oh yeah, I'll be there.
Okay, cool.
Sweet.
All right, so we'll hang out there. And I've been studying a little bit of poker, but I definitely need some coaching because I suck. So can't wait to hang out there. But other than that, no questions. Congratulations on your victory 2-0 this week. We'll see you in Vegas next week.
All right, see you guys.
See ya.
All right, so Fr0zen always very analytical and smart and sharp. I actually didn't realize that Fr0zen got coin all 3 games. That is a very big deal. Yeah. And the more I think about it, it makes sense because taking away the coin from the mana cyclone, we know that it's like a 10% swing the other direction, so it's like a 20% there. But then Fr0zen, like maybe getting that extra edge because of the way the matchup works and because he can squeeze out an extra efficient play on the Token Druid side, maybe that means even bigger gap difference. Which is unfortunate for Muzzy, but As Fr0zen said, it happens sometimes. And Muzzy, even though he ends the week at 4-4, he was on a 3-game winning streak, and I'm sure he can pick himself back right up.
Yeah. One of the things we didn't ask Fr0zen, we asked him if he's going to be in Vegas next week. We didn't actually ask him if he's going to be competing in Hearthstone.
That's right. Maybe he's just going to hit the tables.
He's just going to go to Vegas, hang out, hit the tables, and be like, you guys could do that Masters Tour thing.
He might make more money than doing well at the Masters event because this guy is super good, and he also is not afraid to play high stakes.
Yeah, very true. But I'm assuming he's going to be playing in the Masters Tour. Yeah,
it'd be great. If not, I'm sure there's one thing that he'll be glad to do is stop by and say hi. But that's it. We're halfway done with Super Sunday, TJ. The action has been fast and furious. Coming up next, we got Strife versus Amnesiac. It's a Paladin versus a Hunter, which is a matchup that we didn't expect going into this week. What's going to happen? We'll find out when we come back to the Hearthstone Grandmasters.